So we're talking about cultivating relationship. It says. They heard it.
43.
And he was in the house and he asked them, what were you discussing and arguing about on the road? But they kept quiet because on the road, they were discussed and debated with one another, which one of them was the greatest. Sitting down to teach, he called the 12 disciples and said to them, if anyone wants to be first, he must be last of all in importance and a servant to all. So these are the disciples, right? So these are like the selected 12. And they're sitting around saying, I'm greater than Wendy. I'm greater than Lyle. I'm going to be the greatest. Who's going to be the greatest? Who's going to be the one like sitting next to the Grand Poobah Jesus? I mean, these were like the founders of the church, and they're sitting around talking about which one of them was going to be the greatest. And then when Jesus like called them on it, like punked out like, oh, we ain't saying nothing. But if they were walking in pride, what do you think the likelihood of us?
Me, never.
Yeah, that's pretty prideful. But when you talk about
I'm the most humble.
cultivating relationship and reproof,
No, no.
none of us really want to have our relationships cultivated or dug into or dug up through reproof. Like, who wants to go through a relationship and be reproved or corrected? Like, how does that work? That's a question. How does that work? What do you mean depends?
Depends on
You
the,
get that? Okay,
depends on the situation. Like if I'm doing something wrong or say, if I can only speak for myself.
No,
If I'm
just
doing
speak
something,
when-
if I'm doing something wrong and I don't see that I'm doing it, or I don't sense that I'm doing it or whatever, I won't know because I don't want to harm the relationship.
Okay, so when if someone comes in and says, and you don't agree with what they're cultivating, are you gonna get an attitude to say, thank you for making my life better?
I might get an attitude, but I will also come back and,
5 days later, 15 after you've cussed them out. And
I mean,
said,
I would never cuss nobody out like that. Yeah, there was a little trigger. Like, trigger. Cheeks are burning.
That's like saying, I'm gonna knock you over because you call me pounds.
That depends on the situation.
We can get an attitude when we're told something. Not even a life-threatening situation. There's something about getting corrected that makes you want to fuck up. It makes you want to.
Hypothetically, she texts me to do this.
So tonight in class. Like a lot with me, you can role play well.
Seems like that a lot with me. So it's like, here's a fine example right here.
So when we're.
I was rehearsing, they don't do
Pride is gonna rise up. And we need to understand and not be blindsided because of our areas that we're prideful. And prideful is almost thinking like you can't do wrong. But in any relationship that you're trying to cultivate, you're trying to make better. We say this all the time, iron sharpens iron. But as soon as I put a knife to your throat, you don't really want that iron to be sharpened. You don't want to be correct. But we have to understand, In order to cultivate relationship, you have to understand reproof comes part of it. Reproof is part of it. Somebody online to say something? I'm hearing some background noise. I don't know who it was, but give you opportunity to speak. Okay, so this beginning of this book was talking about the cultivating the relationship, is talking about peace, true peace or false peace. We have to understand which side of the equation we're going to be on. But cultivate means to try to acquire, develop a quality, a sentiment, or skill prepared. To prepare, cultivate means to prepare. This book lays out signs for building peace-filled relationships. We must know when we have true or false peace. How do you know when you have true peace or false peace? How do you know? What's your indication that, man, this is right. This is the right thing to do. I got peace about it. You walk out in the street, you get hit by a truck. Maybe that was false peace.
That's really extreme, though. That's so extreme.
It doesn't happen that quickly, but you have peace about something. 3, 4 months down the road, if God told you to do something 3 months ago.
Right.
3, 4 months down the road, and you're like, well, I just swear I wasn't sin.
Oh, no, that's when I start rationalizing, which is. Right?
Yeah.
This is a question. Question needs to be considered.
Well, I guess, I don't know if it's on track with that question, but it would be like the question, like you're on track with what you think God has asked of you and you're doing what you thought he said. And then later, 3 months, 4 months, you realize, I don't know if that's really what he was asking of me in the way that it's turning out. Or
So it can be confusion, it can be doubt, you can be second guessing, you can say, well, what he said.
Right.
So now the peace that you had in the beginning of this trial, now that you're into the trial, and now some stuff is happening, reproof, we start to question.
Thanks for looking at me when you said.
She's gonna look my direction.
All right, so I'm curious, is that what I'm it's like when,
Oh my God.
I like that approach.
True peace is unmovable. It's unmovable.
We'll see, we'll talk about that. So in this slide, I would probably need to move that over here so you guys can see. How do you cultivate your relationships? These are 4 of personality. The bottom is talking about unsubmissive, and the top quadrant, the farther up you go on the axis, if this is the let me see, X and Y, I forgot my math. You have strong and you have weak. And then this way you have submissive up here and unsubmissive down here. And so when you think about these personality styles, when you're cultivating a relationship, the first thing, type of relationship in the weak corner and unsubmissive, you're going to be unloving, fearful, you self-protect yourself, you're going to be discontent, you're going to be all emotional, and you're going to have some deceitfulness in it. That type of unsubmitted, weak behavior, you tend to be a manipulator. You manipulate people by your feelings. You might be passive aggressive. You might be on an emotional roller coaster. When someone does try to correct you, you're going to protect. That's me. Well, what about you? Your breath stinks too. Well, that's not stopping your breath from stinking. You're manipulating the situation. The next personality, when you're trying to cultivate a relationship, you have this person called dormant. The dormant is a submissive person, but it's a weak submission. So these people operate based on their insecurity. Doormats tend to be compromising. They tend to be nervous. They tend to be doubtful and passive, and they just let everybody walk over. Do you want a relationship like that where you are just walked on and taken advantage of? And if they need something, you're submitting, but you're submitting in a negative fashion. So therefore, your insecurities take over and people just run over you. Is that the kind of relationship you want to cultivate? The next type of personality is, they call it a boss, but I'd say it's controller, control freak. This control freak is strong and unsubmissive. So they're like powerhouse. They're gonna like powerhouse. They're gonna disrespect you. They're gonna be opinionated. They're gonna have contention. They're prideful. They're harsh in the things that they say to you. And generally, the controller is self-centered. It's really all about me. They're not about submitting. They're not about even thinking about doing what you want. And then the last quadrant is the one we all want to be in, right? Bride life. We all want to be submissive and strong. Submissive and strong personality says that you're respectful to people. You're humble. Your identity is silent. That's how come I work so hard with getting you guys to understand who you are. Because when you understand who you are, you won't be moved in these other quadrants because people can't sway you. They can't sway you into another area because I know who I am. And so you have to be solid in your personality. You're secure in love. That's why we're going through all this to teach you guys how to stand in love. Not how to stand in I love you if it's convenient. I love you if. No, we need to be so secure in our love from God and our love of ourselves. Many of us still have some self-hate issues. We don't even love ourselves. So how can we love others as we love ourselves? We hate ourselves. We don't like ourselves. We don't love ourselves. It's going to be kind of hard to be secure when we have these issues going on and we don't even like what we see when we look in the mirror. That's why we're doing the GEMS conference, because there's so many people, particularly women and girls. When we have the young girls here, you know, they look at their faces and they look great, but they have so many insecurities that they don't love themselves because their identity has been broken or shattered for whatever reason. Then generously love. Brides, you just want to love everybody. You're yielding and you feel empowered. When we talk about cultivating relationship, what do you follow? And you may swing based on the people that you're around. You know, somebody that's a powerful person, you may be kind of doormat to that person because they're so powerful. But we have to get to the point where I don't care who you are. I know who I am. You're not going to punk me because I know who I am in Christ. When we're cultivating a relationship, no matter what other type of personality type you're running across, you cannot let their personality type change you. That's how come it's so important for you to know who you are. And more important, know whose you are. Because once you understand that you are valuable and you are a child or of God, then all of these other things won't move you. Okay, so this wasn't in the book, but I just wanted to go over that so that we could have an understanding of where we are. So, you know, look at these relationship types. You may be a mixture in several of these quadrants at different times, but we want to learn to be consistent. We want to understand that we are brides. Even if we're men, we are still considered the bride. I'll email this out so y'all don't have to write that.
I was on my last two syllables.
You could have told me that when you first put the slide.
Every word.
All right, very good.
Like,
Peace you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. This is how you know you have true peace. That even in the storm, it doesn't steal your peace. Even when you get halfway down the road and something breaks up and things don't look right, you're like, I know I heard God. Because I know he gave me peace about making this. It's a peace that surpasses understanding because you're in the middle of that thing and you're getting. And I should be thinking I should be doing this, and then you have to think about. Remember I tell y'all before you make a decision, pray and obey. And you heard from God, and I do believe. Even if you heard him wrong, but you're moving by faith, I think he'll still agree.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're doing something crazy.
Like jumping out of an airplane with,
You know, jumping out there, doing something crazy. I think
without a parachute.
Oh, well. that's crazy.
We might be on the same kind of path. What if you're above, creek?
Peace.
No water.
This, I like this picture. See this picture. I just thought it was really cute. Can you see it?
Yeah,
Looks like it.
this picture,
Yeah.
that's cute.
Does.
I
And it's nice crawling up into the-
accepted. We have a deceiving tongue. We have a
Yeah.
snake-like tongue. Our motives are deceiving, but we come out like we're peaceful,
Right.
right? You're on one of
Jane.
those.
From Jane.
That does depict that pretty clearly.
Right? Right, we have a tongue that is really not speaking peace and words of peace, and what's going in our mind is not peaceful, but what comes out sounds almost right, we all know is wrong. So false peace is deceiving, and this is the acronym actually came up from the book Slush. Slush. Slush is self-seeking and disobedient. If you're going to have false peace, most often, you're going to be operating in what you want, and you will most likely be disobedient in areas of your life to Christ. Most likely that you're going to be in, and I'm not saying in like one area, I'm talking about many areas, you're walking in disobedience. Why? Because you're self-seeking. You want what you want when you want it. Leaders support a worldly view. And I'm using this word leaders really lightly because if you're part of KBI, you're all leaders, you're being trained to lead. Because no matter who you are, if you're in Christ Jesus, you are a leader. Why? Because you are light in a world that's dark. And so therefore, you are leading people out of darkness. Don't take leadership as saying you have this title. Leadership is not about a title. Leadership is about who's following you. And there's people in darkness that's following you out of darkness into light. And I'm going to be talking about this leader supporting a worldly view. What does that look like? These are deceitful people, unfaithful, continually. I mean, this is a continuum. I'm not talking about you slip and fall because you want. I'm talking about continuous unfaithfulness. And then strife. Your life is just full of just strife and fighting and contention, and you don't get along with anyone. Confused, and there's where the harmony is broken with this harmony. If you're part of this slush fund, you're deceitful.
You've been waiting all to say that, huh?
She called me last night, like, am I
I'm the whole week.
Just from last night.
Oh, I thought it was like. They use the word slush fund.
So magic, there's another term. This is what we call in this worldview leader, magic, moral decay and failure. The leader is going to be walking not as Christ. You're going to have so many moral failures. You're not going to be living according to the word. You're going to be living according to the world standards. The world says it's okay, so therefore it must be okay. The Bible's archaic. He didn't really mean that. Okay, that's going to be one way that you're going to be deceived and you're going to have false peace. Agrees with the norms. Okay, there's a lot of churches that preaching abortion is okay. Changing gender is okay. They're ordaining same-sex members. They're agreeing with the norms of society. That's going to be a false peace that you're going to have. And then the gender and intimacy confusion. Intimacy confusion, of course, is, oh, I love you. And it's really saying, oh, I lust you. It's not really love, you know? They don't really know how to be intimate. They don't know really how to get into a place where it's about seeing into each other, being naked and not being ashamed. And then, of course, the gender confusion goes by itself and what that's about. And then most often, leaders, these leaders that support a worldview, they close the door to things that they should open the door to. So, for example, because a person's insecure, they won't accept the power of the cross. They won't accept the fivefold ministry. They won't accept deliverance ministry. They won't accept women ministry. Do you know how often I come up against pastors that I'm still fighting as a woman in ministry to come around the table in this town? It's still, doors are closed to me because I'm a Black female. Oh, then I throw an apostle in there, I'm really thrown under the bus. These are insecurities, suffering. They say if you're suffering or if you're small, then that must not be good. These are closed-minded. God says in his word, you're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer. And then just persecution, thinking that you should have an easy life. These are all areas where insecure leaders will fall prey and fall trap to simply because they have not opened the door to what Christ wants in their life. And then civil unions. This is really the debate about contracts versus covenant. A lot of churches believe in contracts, in setting up the marriage. But for me, I teach covenant. You have to have a covenant. This is not a civil union. Marriage was created by God. It was not created by government. And so when you go to a government, to say that this is how your marriage should go, then the government will rule. It's sort of like what we're doing with the 501c3 versus the 508. When I become a 501c3, when I'm telling you, when I become a state church, and I have to do what the state tells me to do or not do. Okay, it's the same thing. If I want to support civil unions, I have to support what the government says I have to support. That's how come pastors that are 501c3, if they don't marry, they can be sued. Why? Because they're a church of the state. We're not a church of the state. We're a church of the Constitution. And the Constitution gives us a freedom of speech. And so we won't be able to be sued when we say, I'm not going to marry you. Because why? I'm under a different government. You have to follow the laws of the government that you're under. And yes, the Constitution is still part of the government, but it removes us and we can flow more. In our documents that we didn't have to file, but I filed them because we still have people in a mindset, if you're not the Secretary of State, you're not a real entity. But I have scripture in our documents. We talk scripture in our documents. That's how come we went from to what movies called the board to elders. Yeah, because that's more in line with the Bible. So pride really does defile the altar. When we're walking in pride, we are walking in an altar that is defiled, and you will have false peace. There's no question about it. You will have false peace. Yes, ma'am.
So persecution, parentheses, easy life, suffering, parentheses, prosperity. Can you explain that? What is exactly? Because
Okay, so persecution says that they don't believe that you're going to need to be persecuted for their faith. So they talk an easy life. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. He's not going to fall. He's too secure.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's that persecution. They don't want to teach that you'll be persecuted for your faith. They want to teach this easy life. And then suffering, instead of saying that you have to suffer financially, it's this prosperity ministry where if you sow, you're going to get $1 million. What you give, you're going to get back. You don't have to suffer. God doesn't want you to suffer. Well, that's not true. You are going to suffer. It's not going to be all prosperity. God wants you to prosper, but prosperity is not about money. It's about prospering and peaceful in your soul. It's not about the absence of suffering. But if you are insecure, you want to keep people coming back to your church. And so you want to teach something that people want to hear because people are supposed to be happy when they leave church. People ain't happy when they leave KBI. I took your Easter away, I'm gonna take your Christmas away.
Mother's Day away. You took Mother's Day away, I missed that one. You take Grandma's Day away.
Well, for Mother's Day, I gave you 365 days instead of one. Is that an
I
answer?
like that.
You like it?
It does.
Yeah,
I like Valentine's Day, 360 instead of just one.
yeah, that's just crazy. You have to honor your mother every day, not just when the government tells you to honor your mother. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But
I have
anyway,
no idea what the government.
don't be deceived by evil plans of offense. Offense will kill a relationship faster than anything else. You will be offended. If you don't think that, I know I've offended Wendy and Wendy has offended me. But in any relationship that you have, you're going to have offenses. But you have to learn to deal with the offense. Wendy deals with the offense. See, that was like. You know, I'm texting Wendy. There will be offense.
I thought I was the only one.
We have to learn to deal with the offense. This is what I do. Is this relationship more important than this offense? And if the answer to that question is yes, then I forgive the offense. If the answer is no, then I can throw that relationship away. You can, but that's really going to be the litmus test of an offense. First, is the relationship worth keeping? And if it is worth keeping, why am I offended? Why is what they said offending me? Because something is inside of me that this fence is rubbing against, and I need to find out what it is. Because most likely another person is going to offend me in the same way. I like this definition Al put in his book. The enemy's plan is to have someone see something in someone else that causes them to distrust or disobey the one that they ought to trust and obey. This is offense.
Make that my screensaver.
The offense, it really is, the enemy puts up, Wendy should trust me, right? I should trust Wendy. But what the enemy does is he shows us something that says, see, that's why you shouldn't trust her.
Yeah.
But if she's my armor bearer and she has my back and I'm trusting her to pray for me and to cover me, and I tell her things and I don't have to trust her. But the enemy will say, oh, well, this is really crazy. Because this is she's a snitch. But I have to trust her. No, it's the weirdest thing. And so the enemy puts up
It's like, I'm not dying.
what I'm sticking up for. Everyone else is that. And it's recorded, be quiet.
He looked over at me and went,
So we have to be able to deal with. What's wrong with this? We got dogs.
welcome to KBI.
We are formal.
This is a rumble.
Look at that, and she's getting taken aback.
When we think about
Watch your side.
the enemy's plan of offense,
Don't touch him.
when God gives leadership a directional word, I tell you that to go a particular way, the enemy will be quick to point out the faults in their life so that we start magnifying the faults. And we incarcerate ourselves in a place that we cannot receive the direction. So what that means is this. I give Lyle direction. The enemy comes to Lyle and say, you don't have to follow that direction because look at this fault in her life. She does that, she does this. So Lyle doesn't take that direction because the enemy has him focus on my faults. And so now he becomes bound in the areas that he's supposed to go simply because he won't receive my direction.
Oh my God.
That's how,
I just went through this.
that's how offense works.
I mean, I just went through this so hardcore, and you know I did. Ish.
Well, we have to be mindful of the enemy's plan and how he uses offense and how we respond to it. Because we can get trapped and never move past our point because we won't take direction from someone that you're supposed to trust and obey. But since the enemy has tainted you, now you're locked down. The leader's not locked down. But the person who's supposed to be receiving direction gets locked down simply because of offense. You've got to be mindful of it. Because you will never grow if you let offense operate in your life. So, what is true peace? That's what this is about. True peace. And the acronym for true peace is HOLD. We have the slush fund for false peace. True peace, HOLD. We got a hold. Having has loving relationships. That's the first thing. In true peace, you're going to have loving relationships. That's going to be so important to you. Having people in your life that you can trust, that you can love, that love you unconditionally. I know from my spiritual parents and our oversight that I know they love me, that they've seen some worse things in me that you just wouldn't believe, but they helped me through those times and those struggles. You have to have those loving relationships so that you can hold your peace. I remember, I know I keep using Wendy, but I remember when I was looking for my house and I was going to give up. And Wendy knew what I was looking for. And she says, now just looky here, Missy, and she just kind of told me a thing or two about continue to be persistent, that God is going to come through. I mean, she told it to me in love so I could receive it. And I continue to persist because of that loving relationship. And then obedience. We have got to understand we have to be obedient to God. And we have to be obedient to those that we are serving. Obedience is going to be so important to hold your peace. What to do? What did your leader tell you to do? What did your parents tell you to do? You know, when a bishop told me to start my own ministry, I was like, I don't know if this is what God wants. And I prayed. I was obedient to her voice. I was obedient to God. And I had peace about it. That's how you're going to hold your peace, is that you're going to be walking and doing things in obedience. You have leaders on this side too. The leaders here is going to be a leader after God's own heart. Do you have a heart for God? And I'm going to tell you what that looks like too. And then dominion and harmony. When you walk in dominion, that means you're walking in authority. You're walking in harmony with other people, that people can actually stay connected and walk with you. It's sort of like you have a joint effort and you guys are doing your part to get to the end. That's how you're going to know you're going to have peace in relationship. You're going to have peace even when you're going through the storm. Because a lot of times you haven't been in the military. I haven't been in the military, but it's like when you go into a fight, that those people that go in the ditch with you, you end up having a better relationship with them. And you can take that from the natural, and it's going to be spiritual. And the problem with many people, why they don't have dominion and harmony and love, is because soon as you get into that struggle and you get into the ditch, you leave the person. And so you never really get the true relationship because you didn't go through the ditch with the person. You've got to have ditch experiences with people that you're going to call friends and cultivating a relationship. But many times it says in the book that as soon as trouble comes in a relationship, we turn and hightail it out. And then we wonder why we have no friends, true peace, true harmony, true love, because we don't stick around long enough to let it happen. We keep running. And then shows faithfulness. You have to be faithful to the things that God tell you to do. So honors, how do you lead? You lead with honors. First thing you have to do is humility. You have to promote others, not yourself. A humble person says, go ahead, you can go first. I don't need to go first. Leaders have to be humble. They're not like running to the table and trying to eat first, although I do. I think I should be first. But it's just an exception. But
Good example.
oh,
Don't say I'm the
offense
most humble
is
person.
minimized. And that's minimized by something I call, we have to remove the facts. That's another acronym. Faults overlooked. You have to learn to look over the faults of people. I know a lot of people see me and they're like, oh, I know you see my wrong. I know you see this or see that. And the leader, you have to look over the fault. Yeah, God shows me stuff about you guys. I'm not gonna sit here and just like knock you down and just talk about your faults. I'm gonna lift you up and talk about the good things. Except for Cassie, she's like, no.
No. After the word,
Honest,
no,
what?
oh,
I get it off.
He said, oh. I don't know, it's about my box, you see it?
that's why I'm sitting there like,
No, it's not.
Leader of the post.
It's honors. You don't see honors?
we're getting there now.
We're getting closer. So now we're gonna go to
Yeah,
a bar?
that's not-
So now we're gonna go to a bar. And now we're gonna go to the bar.
Don't be a hoe.
Maybe this is one of the faults that we're overlooking.
Okay, leads with honor. Can you see it now?
We're getting there, yes.
Yeah,
I see that
point.
but I just,
Offense.
yeah.
Minimize the offense. We have to actually begin to overlook people's faults. People's attitudes have to be forgiven, and their traits, you have to wait for them to be transformed by repentance. That's how you minimize offense. You have to trim the fat, you have to remove the fat. So that you can begin to walk with people and not be offended.
Yeah.
We get so offended so easy, and we jump to conclusions so quickly in relationships, and we break relationships because we thought that's not even what the truth was. Find out what the truth is. And don't let offense. You cannot walk in offense in deliverance ministries. You can't walk offense in ministry anyway, but deliverance ministry particularly, because the enemy is always going to be trying to do something to separate you from the ministry that you're working in. You need to discern. You to, as a leader, have the ability to discern what it is that you're dealing with. If you don't have the spirit of discernment, you're going to be kind of messed up. So pray for that. You open doors. We talked about the open doors, the closed doors. To have peace, you also have to think about the open doors. The open doors are the same doors we talked about that was insecure. Open doors for people who have peace. They understand the power of the cross. They are moved by the Spirit. They know women can be in ministry. They understand persecution. They understand suffering. They understand fivefold ministry. Those are the doors. When you walk in peace, you open those doors. You don't close those doors. And you also open the doors to restoration, forgiveness, revelation, and faith. You have to understand, if you're going to have peace, you're going to have a revelation. You have to have a revelation over the problem. You have to have a revelation over offenses that you have. And you have to learn to forgive those offenses. You have to understand that when you rebuke someone in relationship, the purpose of the rebuke is for restoration. not to throw people out, but what you're really seeking to do is restore that person back to health, wholeness, and cleanliness. And then faith. Those are the open doors. You have to keep those doors open. If you really want to have peace and hold your peace. Receive correction by reproof. That's the R. That's how you can honor, as a leader, how you walk in honor. Okay, any questions on any of them?
You're sending this out, right?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Yes, because I know you listening, walking the baby. Submission purifies the altar. That's what you have to understand. Deceit defiles it. Pride defiles it. But submission purifies. So we want to walk in honor and have a purified altar. So we talked about fact, and this is the road to true peace, the relationship. I talked about this triangle last week where you have relationship, offense, and covenant. Covenant has to be the foundation. True peace requires us to understand how to resolve conflict to a place where you can have resolution. So we have to learn how to have conflict resolution skills, because we will have offenses, but you have to get to the point where you have this base covenant, and that base will hold us because we're in this covenant, and I'm not gonna run from you, and you're not gonna run from me. That's the whole basis of the covenant. Because we have that understanding, when an offense comes, that foundation will have us shore up our relationship again, because we are in this until death do us part. This is for marriages. This is for people that you are in covenant with. I'm in covenant with KLI. I'm in covenant with JGM. I'm in covenant with the ministries that cover me. I'm in it with them, and they're in it for me. And when there's offenses, we work on this relationship so that we can be shored up. We have to understand covenant. That's going to be a sure road to peace.
Can you give some example
Of which?
of conflict resolution?
Well, the first thing you do, is Matthew 18, right? You have a problem with the person, you go to them privately. Cassie, I was hurt by the fact that you said this to me. It's not, Cassie, you did this and you need to stop. See the difference? You're telling the person from your perspective what happened to you. And you're giving that person the opportunity to explain or get their side of the picture so that you can get clarity. If they're like, oh, I never did that, and like, you know that this thing is an offense and they're not really shining up to it, take another person with you as a mediator, right?
Right.
And have those two people, not this person be 2-on-1. It's a person that's going to be there to kind of help that conversation along. That's going to be your second level. But any of these things that you see on this screen here is going to have you walk in a place where you will not want to have conflict resolution. You won't want to have conflict resolution if you're thinking that I don't care what they tell me, I know what I saw, and I'm not going to change. Because that's not a good way to go into conflict resolution, because you're looking for your answer.
Right.
You're not looking for a resolution, right? And many times we go into a conflict saying, this is what you did, and I want you to apologize. You might not say it in that words, but that's really what you want out of this conflict resolution, an apology. You want them to say that they were wrong, even if they don't even know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
I'm mad. I'm crazy. I'm guilty of that right there. Like, hey, so that came out really.
Man, you're crazy. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Okay, so did mine,
No, but
was that like a self-admittance, like accidental? No, like, I'm mad, crazy, guilty of that. Like, whenever somebody says like, that's mad crazy, like that's what I meant. It wasn't like saying I'm those things, but like, I'm super guilty of that. And I don't like that about myself because it causes a lot of issues in my relationships because I want them to admit because. And this is very selfish and I know that because I have no problem admitting when I've done this or done that.
Well,
Just-
but it could be two things.
And that is so wrong.
It's two things.
Yeah.
If you want someone else to admit, because I admit, both of those are self-seeking.
To me, if both parties admit it, and then that is a resolution.
No, you didn't hear.
That's how I see it.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying about the same person.
Right.
I admit my faults.
Right.
I go to you and I want you to admit your faults because I admit my faults.
She'll get
so
your fault
funny.
too. Yeah.
Yo, that sounds crazy.
I think Wendy will admit,
Maybe I am being
I
crazy.
think Wendy will admit your faults too.
But why is it so hard to admit?
Because it's easy for you to admit,
Right.
you're not listening to what I'm saying.
I am though.
Admit that you're not.
There's a difference.
Your position is, I admit my faults. And your position is also, I want you to admit your faults because I admit my faults. Both of those positions are self-seeking.
Okay.
So
I
it
don't
has-
want to admit that at all, but unfortunately, that's the case here.
No,
I don't admit that, but that's the case.
Okay, and so the question is really is to have a relationship, to cultivate relationship, you're admitting your faults because you're wrong, you broke the heart of God.
That's gonna make me cry.
It has nothing to do with the other person. It has nothing to do with the other person and having them see you're right or you're wrong. Because now you're making that person your God. Like they're gonna like
Right.
free you up for some reason.
Right.
And they can't free you up. Why? Because it's not even their issue. Because we're self-seeking. We're doing this because I want to feel good. I want to get off the hook.
It's not, okay, maybe it's that and I'm not seeing it, but in my head and in my emotions, if the resolution has always been if both people admitted it. So I always start with admitting it because I'm hoping that it will.
You see how many times you use I? So then what's the resolution? What gets resolved that you don't do it like that? Because in Kathy's way, the resolution is we're both admitting our fault. The resolution will be is, why am I being offended? And having that conversation about your own wants. Like, why is this hurting me? And find out like what's going on with me.
I get it.
Because
I get it.
many times, the problem's not even that person.
Right.
Because she's gonna do it, and Shelly's gonna do it, then Bob's gonna do, now you got a problem with the whole ministry, you're gonna leave. And the problem really is, there's something in you.
And
So it's seeking God, okay?
Right.
If you offend me, oh man, it hurts. I'm gonna go tell her off. No, and I do this. I do this. I do this. One of y'all say something crazy out of the left side of your mouth.
She did it all the time. I
And
thought that's what we're trading.
what I'll do is I'll call Wendy or I'll call Sharon. I'm saying, this is what happened. And many times Sharon will say, awesome.
I can't, that's what
You don't need to say that. But it's just venting that out.
it's
And
not about the admittance.
It's about what, this is why I'm mad, and this is what's going on, and they'll say, awesome, that's not it, And then after I think about it, I can now say, well, why was that wrong? What did that do to me? And then I can come back to that person the right way instead of the way that I want to come, which is how it was sent to me. Does that answer your question, Amanda?
Yes, I get to not tell them to.
Dealing with the conflict within yourself, why do you even ever go back to that other person that has? Okay, so you go to yourself when you find out you hurt my feelings were hurt, okay? And I come back in and it depends on what the answer is. My feelings were hurt because I felt devalued. Well, why do I feel devalued? Because God will say, you don't value yourself. Well, if I don't value myself, going back to that other person's not going to resolve that. Because I don't value myself. And it's nothing that they can say to give me that value. I don't have to resolve that. That's one scenario. The other scenario is they devalued me. I valued myself. I know that that was true. What they said was false and it was done to hurt me. I go back. We had this conversation and you said this, this is what I heard. Did you mean to say that? No, that's not what you meant to say, or you I meant to say that. I meant to say
I meant to tell you.
in one situation, the devalue is because you're agreeing with that devalue. The other one is, no, this is not me. We're having a conflict, a true conflict. Now, we need to resolve that because this friendship is too important that I can't have you thinking that about me. And I don't want you to think that about me. And I don't want to think that that's what you think of me. In this relationship, we got to get this straight. Does that make sense? So that's how come the first thing you have to do is go to God and say, what is really the offense? Because after that will determine if there's a problem there or if it's a problem here. Does that make sense to you, Cass? And the difference is because I agree, because I say I'm wrong, because this is the other problem. People pleasers will say you've done everything wrong just to please people. And now you want people to be a people pleaser and appease you because that's your personality. You know, we want to self-please because we don't want a rift in the relationship, and we're thinking if we just apologize, everything will be okay. But everything might not be okay. I can say I'm sorry and not really be sorry.
Right. My thing is also another thing that I run into is, well, we all do, is the person is legitimately being a jerk face, and they refuse any part, letting that go is so hard because I want to be around the person, I want to spend time with that person, but
that's the point when you go to Matthew 18, you go to that person and you try to correct.
And there
They
is
don't want to correct. I take you with me and we try, they still are acting a donkey. We bring them in front of me, the church, and they still acting a donkey. Well, you know what we do? We throw them out. And we don't throw them out because we hate them. We're throwing them out simply because their life, hopefully, when the enemy ravished them to a point where they'll see the wrong with their ways, we want to restore them. We want to revive them. We want to love them. But I don't want to love you to a point where I'm slitting my own throat.
right.
I can't love you enough if Jesus' death isn't enough, I'm not going to kill myself for you. That's why you let them go. Not because you don't love them. It's because you do love them. But you're letting the enemy take care of them. And most often what happens, particularly in the church environment, they just leave the church with the problem and go to another church and go through the same thing all over because they're not dealing with their issues. That's how come we're talking about this, so that we can understand we're all going to hurt each other, but we have to learn how to resolve it. That's why we're talking about love so much, because love covers a what? Multitude of sin. We have to do that. We can't do that here among each other. How are we going to go out in the street? And yeah, it's easy to love a person in the street. You only see them once. But now you see people every day, now you hate on them, that doesn't even make sense to me,
Right.
right? And so this reproof has to be part of your relationship. You have to understand, you gotta take correction, you have to understand when you're taking correction, you know, why you're being corrected. It's not because I don't like you, you're being corrected because I love you too much for you to continue to go in that direction. That's really why you want to do correction, Kathy, not because I want you to agree with me. I want us to go in the same direction and follow Christ.
Right.
It has nothing to do with my preferences.
So correction and for restoration.
Correction for restoration, yes. Or direction. You can be doing it for direction because you want people to go into, I think I used the example last week. Why? Wendy wants to go to the beach. Get down. Get down. Wendy wants to go to the beach, which is south, but she's going north. And I'm just going to say, good luck, Wendy. You know, you'll be going to the beach, you know, up in Canada. Right? But she wanted to go to Oregon beaches. So direction says, you're going the wrong way. And is she going to get offended because I'm telling her she's going to end in the wrong place? That's my job as your pastor to say, Shelley, you're going the wrong direction. What you're doing is not right. I'm not going to tell it to you that way, but I'm going to give you direction to point you in the right direction. And prayerfully, you'll hear me without me bleeding all the things that I see you doing wrong. Maybe Shelley might be a little bit better. Why don't you study this? Right? Why don't you look at that? And let you come up with your own conclusions. Because if someone just said you're doing wrong, really enough.
Totally quit looking the door.
Does that help? Yes.
Okay, I cannot finish this sentence. It's not about the admittance, it's about,
The relationship.
Okay.
Relationships have to be much more important than the ought. That's the first thing I told you. Is this relationship more important than the offense? The relationship has to weigh more than the offense. Because remember the covenant. The covenant is what keeps me. The covenant says this. I'm going to stay with you until I die. Even if you fall, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up on you. And I have to learn to give up on people for the purpose of letting them go to be restored and come back. Sometimes I hold on too long, longer than I should. That's my problem. And I need to learn how to let go of people soon.
Would that be an example of like when we have a loved one and instead of helping them, we enable them?
Well, that's the thing we can do is enable them. We let them continue to steal from us, take stuff out of our purse, sell our radio equipment, you know. We do too much to enable their behavior instead of saying, look, we need to sit down and talk because this isn't working for me. You know, so that's what it's for. It's not, you know, you're stealing from me, you got to get out the house. You want to help the person to restore that person so that they want to do right. But if they don't want to do right, why am I bending over backwards to help you and you're not even ready to be helped? You go and do you. When you're ready, I'll help. Right?
Amen.
Yeah. So these are some of the things that's going to be a hindrance to reproof. Reproof means an expression of blame or disapproval, criticism for a fault, rebuke, reprimand, criticize sharply, something said or done to show that you disapprove of someone's behavior. Did you get that? Reproof is about behavior. It's not about identity. Do you get that? Many times when we're corrected, we think it's about our identity and it's about our behavior. I'm not reproaching I'm not reproaching you harshly. That's what a rebuke or reproof is, a harsh one, because your character is messed up. It's because your behavior is messed up. and your behavior what has to get fixed. That's what reproof is. But all of these things, tradition, oppression, unforgiveness, strife, religion, pride, insecurities, all of these things are going to be off the road. And it's going to take you off the road to your road of peace. All of these things are off the road. That's what this picture is trying to show you. That none of these things are going to be on your road to peace. They're all going to be off the road. Every last one of them. And if you think that you can stay on the road and have a religious spirit, you're kidding yourself. If you think you can stay on the road to peace and you have all these insecurities in your life, you're really kidding yourself.
We stay on this road, we have intellect.
Well, intellect, what happens like as you begin to reason, well, I know that this is this way. I know how it goes. And you're using all of your reasoning, but it's not about your intellect. Let this mind that is in us also be in Christ Jesus. You want to use the mind of Christ, not your reasoning and your truth and your false and what you know to be true. Your intellect will kill you. That's why it's off the road. It's not that you're going to throw your intellect out, but some people use so much intellect that they don't even, they're not thinking for God, they're thinking for themselves. Go ahead.
I just had a really exact example of this. A friend that told me she was atheist, and I said, well, have you always, I knew you had gone to church as a child, and at what point did you stop going and believing? And she basically went through the process and told me that it was her philosophy degree that she ended up having that took her from her faith to believing that there's no being out there.
Right.
And it was so sad for me because I said, well, why did you pick that? She said, that's the silliest reason is it was an easy credit to get. She needed it just to finish her education. And that little bit is what took her away from her faith.
Yeah, it's like my sister, she's extremely intelligent. Her kids are all intelligent and she believes like, she used to be like all in a Sunday school and stuff like that as a child. And now she went to agnostic to now it's like her whole marriage is like open and her oldest son just became a girl. And I'm like, I don't even know, like, I'm like, wow, I don't even know what to say to her anymore. I'm like, so I just posted.
It really mess up our faith. And, you know, and I understand that because I'm a mathematician, I'm a scientist, a computer scientist, right? And to do things by faith goes against my training. Science has to be proven, you know? I mean, my digits are 0 and 1 for computers. It's either off or on. You can't do off or on with God.
You understand the zeros and ones and bases and all that in mathematics?
I mean, in computers.
Yeah, I just don't know how they operate. I had to think, oh, this is how you get into their
Emotional
Other than stuff that you can
I'll
get
go
off.
on and write that one here.
Yeah.
because-
She would do the road.
Take you off the road. But these were just things that I had talked about in prior slides that I wanted to kind of bring it together. So here are some benefits from receiving rebuke. I think this is the last slide. Good questions tonight, good interaction. Draws you out of sin and closer to God. See, that's really why you want to get that correction. Because I want to take you away from your sin. I want to take you away from going the direction you're in and really have you get closer to God. Brings abundant life, makes you wise, wisdom of God. You'll be blessed and honored. You receive treasure from God. So these are all benefits from receiving rebuke. I guess I wasn't done. We went over this in a RISE school to help with their ministry goal. And Al has this idea on page 212 or so, I think it is. He talks about a hand, a foot, and an eye. And when I looked at that, you will have peace and protection for your position, your purpose, and your promise. Your position is your hand. Your hand says, what work do I want to do for God? Your foot has to do with authority. It says, where do you want me to take me? What's my purpose? And that's what those little footprints are. Right. And then my eyes, what is it that God wants to see? Because that's my promise. Many times we don't have peace because we don't follow our hands, our foot, or our eyes. We don't follow our position, or we don't know our position, we don't know our purpose, and we don't know our promise. So therefore, we don't have peace. You have to know all three in order to walk in peace.
Hand disposition.
Oh, hand is position.
On page 215.
Yeah, I made up the position, the purpose, and promise. That's not.
Of course.
Foot is purpose,
Well, with one of these studies, be with that.
and eyes promise.
Where did, how did you come up with it, if you don't mind me asking?
He gave me revelation as I was doing this.
She writes
reading.
books to go with the
Oh,
book.
And it just revealed to me when it says, you know, work for where you're going. Well, where I'm going is my position, you know, that's like, what am I set to do? What is in my hand to do? I mean, that's my position, right? And then it says places that he wanted to go, that I have a purpose in the walk. I'm walking in authority, but where is where is he sending me? I have to walk with a purpose. I'm just not meandering around and wandering. You know, I want to be on point, because this is how I have peace. Remember, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to have peace, because you don't know where you're going. I mean, just think about it. If you're out on the road and you're lost, do you have peace? Yeah. And so when you know when you're going, you have peace. I know what God's called me to do, and so I can walk in peace as I know. And then my eyes let me see the vision, because I know what you showed me, and I know that what the outcome is going to look like, and that's going to give me peace, because no, this isn't it. This wasn't what he showed me. No, that's not this. That's how I got it.
yeah.
Right? Correction is for your protection. That was mine too, Lyle. We have to understand.
I wasn't saying that.
Wow. Correction is for your protection. I give correction not because I hate you, or it's because if you're a mom, don't touch that fire. Why? Because you hate your child? Oh, you love your child. You don't want to get burned. It's the same thing. If you're a leader, you stop people from doing stuff, not because you hate them, because you love them. That's why correction is for your protection, not for your demise. But you have to see it that way. But if you have this rejection spirit, correction looks like rejection, and you're going to run away.
I was thinking back to the Rise class, the things that you shared with one.
That's all I have. We have to honor the altars. We have to purify our hearts. But this is talking about our personal altar. If our hearts are not pure, then everything else that flows from it will be. So we can just continue to read in the books. Hey, Teresa, not Teresa. I don't know who's the next teacher. They Wednesday.
Wednesday's gonna be teaching. I just told someone yesterday, she doesn't go.
I didn't know.
Why did she go on? I don't even know her name. What's her name? I can do that sometime today.
No, Sean, yeah, it's just a Wednesday.
Good questions tonight, good interaction. Any other questions or comments?
So whenever it comes to oppression, how can all of this be an oppression? Oppression, how can, I mean, like, what is the name of the demon behind this?
Well, it's all tradition,
Sure.
religion, pride. I mean, it's a lot of demons. Self-sufficiency is a bad thing. When we were talking about being a controller, being the 4 personality styles we talked about, those are oppressive, and everything under those quadrants are oppressive.
But
We have to learn to not want the oppression. That's why we went through this so that you can know true peace from false peace. False peace will be very oppressive in that way.
it's all,
Trying to get a mile back.
it's all.
You're trying to get a mile.
Yeah.
It's a zoo tonight.
We should go get some scrolls and bring them. You ever go get some scrolls and bring them in? That'll be next week. Next. Oh, you want to get the tickets?
We love, thank you for the day, we thank you for the, man, I don't think I can live till the heart.
She's like, no, we couldn't. You know what, I think I just got a parrot. I think I just said that. I'm just parrot, no, I'm a parrot. We don't want to drive to put a other parrot, okay?
And she's at your feet.
Yeah, you have, I'm just gonna parrot, all right, I'm just gonna parrot. And then you let me.
Father, we thank you. You've done, we love you, we honor and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
I'm gonna get the girl.